Okay guys, I starting a new series of videos which is based on this book. But what I'm using is a phone, and this phone has beautiful colors, I hope, but the problem is that there is no timer. So it seems it says that there is a timer for the pictures, for the photos, but I cannot find it. And I cannot find a timer for the video. I don't understand why you make a phone that doesn't have a timer, but okay. So now we are going back to the De La Bourdonnais McDonnell matches. There are 6 matches. I would like to show you game 2, not because it's particularly important. In another video with the old camera I made the game 1, but because this book, it teaches you chess history in a manner that you cannot imagine. And why do I say that? Because the fourth game, game number 1, was De La Bourdonnais against McDonnell, right? The second game is still De La Bourdonnais against McDonnell. Why? Because drawn games were scheduled to be replayed with the same color, a practice not uncommon in the 19th century chess. Thus did McDonnell begin the series with 4 consecutive blacks, finally completing his tour with 45 blacks and only 40 white. So guys, this is very funny, right? Because I can tell you that at the chess club there were people that if they had the 3 blacks in a row, they would start to shoot other people, bang their head against the wall, complain to any kind of humanitarian organization there is. But this guy, McDonald, had 4 blacks in the row in the beginning of a match. Okay, the match starts with e4, e5, like we have seen in the previous game, knight f3, knight c6. Here it says that the move d6, that is also called the Philidor defense, is not destined to make an appearance in the series. So he didn't play the Philidor. The game continues with d4, that is the Scotch gambit. And here it says, in Lewis' opinion, this opening is too difficult for a beginner. In his second series of lessons, he notes that his sources for information on the Scotch game are the Modenese, Master Lolly, as well as his earlier 1828 analysis of a London versus Edinburgh correspondence match of 1824-1828. Lewis had been one of the leaders on the losing London team. Okay, so after d4, there is e takes d4. As you can see, the book is really teaching you chess history. Now, why would chess history be important? Because the reality is you're trying to memorize opening moves, but in reality, if you get a book like this one, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm showing you all the book because, as I said, I'm trying a new camera. But if you buy a book like this one and you just watch the games, practically your mind will acquire all the opening theory without the need to memorize moves, because you will remember, look what De La Bourdonnais and McDonnell did and why. Because during a match you try to find new moves to outsmart your opponent, right? So this is what these two guys did, and they did it like 190 years ago. So it's kind of very important, I think. So after bishop c4, for example, one move that I honestly they didn't play was with queen f6, and I have played this Scotch gambit few times. Some of the times they play h6 because they understand that I'm going to sacrifice on here, and maybe they already had the bad experience of finding their king totally exposed in the center, so they try to do this, which you don't care because you continue to develop your pieces. But the point here is that we are going to discover the chess opening theory through moves that were actually played in the past, because in the past they had the same problems we have today. Okay. Okay, here obviously instead of this, this was better, this was definitely better, no, but queen f6, oh my god, not really good. Okay. So why did it play, for example, this bishop c5, here it says, was being introduced by Edinburgh in the aforementioned match. Or maybe it was this queen f6 that he means that. Yeah, it probably means that on queen f6. That's interesting. But the problem is, it doesn't make to try to grip and have a hold of that pawn. It's more important, guys, to develop the pieces. In the opening, the tasks are free. I continue to tell you, they are obviously to take out your pieces, to castle, and to connect the rooks. These are the three things that you should do in the opening. After queen f6, now I will just go a little faster because I don't really care to comment on the opening. What I want to see is if this video really works or if I have to invent something else. So we are on c3. Of course, also castle was an idea. Why? Because the king is in the center, you want to keep it in the center, and maybe c3 not the best. But look how interesting it is. Now black plays d3. And honestly, d3, you know what, guys? It's a move that I play in the Sicilian when they played with Smith-Morra, and I didn't study any line. Because what I know is that I don't want to take and then figure out a real way to refute a gambit in real time that I don't have that time, because today the time control is kind of short. So what I do is I give back the pawn, but this is blocking this. So it's not a good idea, right? I have given back the pawn, but I have made a mess. No? I have made a mess. And so obviously white plays queen takes d3. Again, here maybe this bishop c5, but they would have encountered before. So as you can see, the same move that maybe a few moves ago was right, now could be a waste of a tempo. The problem is that black plays d6, and maybe that's why they mentioned the Philidor before, because if he had done it before in the beginning, when e4, e5, knight f3, d6, yes, you have the bishop block, but it will get open. Instead, now you must wait for white to try to open your lines. With that said, let's go on. Castle and queen g6. Here it says the queen is somewhat more active here than it was at home, but the mild pressure exerted hardly justifies the investment of 2 tempi this early in the game. It says, however, that poor was knight e5, because knight takes e5, d takes e5, and then f4, opening the lines for white. So queen g6, as you can see, the idea is also bishop h3, but remember that there is probably knight h4. So I'm not sure it's really working. How did white continue? Well, this is an interesting part. Stainis, so we see that these games have been analyzed by Morphy, that maybe played very actively 10 years or 20 years later than them, and then by Stainis, the fourth world champion, and then we are speaking of maybe someone who analyzed them 70 years later. Okay, but they were still very important. Now, if they are important for Morphy and Steinitz, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but I do believe they are important for us. Okay, so that's why this is an important book that you want to read. Often the beginners say, oh, but which book should I read? Well, obviously a beginner should read a book about checkmates, about endgames, to have an idea. But if you really want the opening theory, if you really want to learn the openings, I think watch games is kind of fundamental. And then, of course, you are lucky because there are a lot of players like me, probably in YouTube, that are giving you free lessons, right? So the game continues with bishop f4, but here, like I said, Steinitz recommended knight d4, and here in the book is given the Steinitz analysis. So as you can see, the author did the homework for you guys, and that's why you want to have the book, because it's useless to reinvent the wheel, right? If you can have it made by someone else. Bishop e7, knight bd2, and now there is a move that is considered a mistake, which is h5. h5 obviously is not really a mistake. It's the idea that black wants to attack, right? But probably is not doing it right. The best way to do it is to first develop all your pieces, because you need them out in order to win. Again, one pawn against 1, 2, 3, because this is controlling this rank, and the 3 pawns is not gonna win, right? We have 6 pieces at least. So that's why I tell you h5 is a mistake, not because it's a mistake, but because the entire idea of the attack is premature, is very premature. So they say relative best was knight h6. I don't know, honestly. I think this entire position is not the best for attacking, and that queen is not in the best spot. Sometimes you have to feel it, okay? So in any case, he played h5, and de la Bourdonnais played rook fe1. Here he says that he should have avoided simplification and played king h1. Okay, let's see. Bishop h3, which is a typical move again, but as you can see, he has only 2 pieces. Here there are wealthy of pieces that are defending here, so I don't think it's a correct way. And that tells you a lot also about the strength of this McDonnell, because to me his strength, I don't know, I could see 1600 that do something like this. Okay, knight h4, and of course an alternative could have been this, but you must be careful because it takes. If you take, then there is h4, and this is a pin, and you're giving him a kind of advantage. So maybe knight h4 is better for white, because it introduces the queen on the rank, right? Here there is bishop takes h4. This is the simplification probably that he was talking, but also this move is not so good. And of course, like I told you, the queen does its job and takes down that naughty bishop. Okay, after queen takes h3, there is bishop f6. And let's see. Now it's white turn to play. Obviously, finally white tries to play opening the lines with e5, but again, guys, that's what I told you also in the game before, that you need to open the line, but you need also to be prepared. In this case, for example, the queen is preventing black from castling, so he cannot go that way. He must only go this way, but this way is a little shaky. So here, for example, the author of the book says f3 followed by knight f1 and e3, it's better for white. Why? Because practically you would kind of exploit the white squares, the light squares weaknesses due to the fact that black exchanged and lost the light square bishop. So you want to go here because then you control the enemy. But here he didn't write it, okay? So let's see, he played e5. As you can see, e5 also gives blacks the possibility to do something, or maybe white had the idea to play bishop d3. That could be kind of interesting. Very interesting. D takes e, bishop takes e5, bishop takes e5. These pieces are very, very light compared to the usual one I have, and probably they are in harmony with that period, because in that period maybe these pieces were made of ivory. Now these pieces are made of a composite material, and I don't have any idea what composite mean. I don't know if they made them with a 3D printer. That's a possibility. However, let's return to our game played nearly 200 years ago, and white went on with f4. This is the thing I like, guys, of this book, the fact that I have a time, I have a chance to see games played nearly 200 years ago and enjoy also the comment if I don't know something. Knight g e7, of course, that bishop is doomed, but here is the problem, no? How does white continue? White continue with this. So he has not opened the file, if you notice. And this rook, we are at move 16, is still out of the game. Okay, so as you can see, there is a problem here, right? There is a problem. There are multiple problems in the game that they play. Black continue with queen g4. McDonnell plays to alleviate some tension, as the direct castle has to contend with e6. So if he played castle, e6 would have been the next, and yes, probably not so good. But then the question is, I'm sorry, you exchange the queens, you have a kind of advanced pawn that could fall. I don't really see your advantage as black in this situation. I see that things are not going well, right? And now the Bourdonnais plays a move, queen takes g4, that probably not so good. It was better to play queen e3, keeping the possibility to throw this on and then opening the lines, no? And notice, if you have a queen over the board, you can create more threats than without the queen. I mean, the queen is definitely a powerful piece. H take g and knight b3. I think already now we are in a kind of phase like the middle game, end game. If the pieces are exchanged, I don't know. Knight g6, and guess what? Now he plays e6. But it's not so good. It seems that it was better rook e4. And then when he takes, for example, rook e1. So you create strength, you create activity. But e6, not so good, I think. Not so good. And why is not so good? Because, guys, that is a isolated pawn, yes. That is a pawn that is going forward, yes. But in reality, black is controlling the square in front. There is not anymore the dark square bishops. So how do you actually make a mess? I don't know. Let's see. He played f5. Yes. Rook a d1. He wants to go here. Knight c e5. Wow. Not only is controlling d7, but is attacking this. And he has enough time probably to play king e7 and a rook in d8. Let's see what happens. Bishop d3, rook h5. Bishop c2, king e7, knight d4, king f6. So look how nice is this maneuver. He knows that the rook is valuable and he doesn't want to keep the rook defending. Also, if he's defending there, and it's become a kind of problem. But in reality, now the king is very active and is a powerful piece, and this king is not active at all. So that I really like it. As you can see, we are learning something. So rook f1. Now let's see the next fight for f5. Knight e7, like I said, is defending, but not only defending. Now that you have provoked knight e7, he can play g6 and solve all his problems. So what does white do? He plays b4. Now, Morphy suggested knight e2 because the pawn cannot be really taken. And here there is an analysis that proves it, okay? Now, another thing that it's interesting could be rook a h8 attacking this, and that could be a problem. And let's not forget the lesson from Capablanca's games, right? If maybe white consider that a weakness, he has exploited all he could from that weakness. So at a certain point you need to work on creating another weakness if you want to win. But I believe that the move before was played with the idea that he doesn't want black to play c5 because he's afraid to lose this. That's why Morphy's comment was 92. And as you can see, guys, I want to tell you one thing. Imagine these guys that were analyzing games of other people and they didn't have any kind of help because they didn't have an engine which could tell them, hey, this position is better for white, this position is better for black, blah, 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 blah. And this is the line, boom, that is generated in a few seconds. These people had to use their brain. And that's why the game was considered a game for intellectuals, right? So, rook a h8, yes. Knight e2 finally plays the Morphy move, but here it loses the pawn. And that is kind of scary, right? Here he plays knight g3 to keep this square, but here there is a kind of continuation that is interesting. Notice there is an interesting idea by Staunton, which is knight f3 check. Once you take, it takes here. But notice Staunton gave a line and Morphy refuted it. So why is that important? Because as you can see, maybe they were trying also to prove which was the best player, who was the best player, at a distance, not through a direct fight over the board. Because if I remember well, Staunton never wanted to play Morphy, probably he was scared. So after knight g3, there is g6 protecting this. And again, get the book and you will see all the Morphy analysis. I honestly don't want to give you all the analysis because it's not fair probably for the publisher and the author, but they are there. So the book is worth it. Bishop b3, king g5, rook d e1, knight d3, rook e3, and knight f4. Now, this move is a mistake because there is knight e4, okay? And then it goes to get it probably. Again, there is the analysis that you can watch in the book. But after knight f4, white plays rook f2 because this was the attack, and black goes back. Rook to h7, rook d2, knight h5, and the white takes, knight h5, rook takes, and there is this, king f2. It seems that the move rook d7 is too ambitious and black could win. So be careful, guys, what to do. The line they give, it's about 5-6 moves long, so it's not very short. But why? Because we are entering an endgame, and in the endgame, calculation is king, right? So he played king f2. I don't know, and this would be interesting to know the time control for this, because clearly could have been a lot of analysis. f4, rook e5, and now there is knight f5. And here, guys, there is huge half a page of analysis because white is now faced with a terrible f3, so is able to break through. This is not a joke. So what did and black is winning in many of his lines, but I can see black is winning. Yeah. Okay, so how did white do? White played a kind of dubious move, that is e7, but it obliged black to react, right? Rook e8, rook d7, rook h7, and rook takes e7. Rook e takes e7, so finally black has eliminated the problem. Rook c takes e7, rook takes e7, and rook takes e7, and knight takes e7. So we have made all these exchanges, and now we are in an endgame that is kind of interesting. Why? Because white king is obliged to stay here to control the situation. I mean, he has a majority, black, right? So it's a problem. And the black king maybe can go on the other side to try to neutralize that. So sometimes in the endgame you need to understand the dynamics of the pieces, the power of the pieces, and see which one is better suited to do what. Okay? Okay, so what did white play? White played a4, obviously is mobilizing the his majority. King f5, a5, king e5, bishop d1, attacking g4, g3 check, and now king f3. So now there is a problem. He has this that needs to be defended, right? Black plays knight d5, bishop c2, g5. b5. So guys, I just want to show you one thing. If you play bishop e4, that would have been a mistake. Can you see why? If you play bishop e4, it's a mistake because there is g4 and you have to remove the king. So you take and you lose the bishop. With that said, now you must understand that this is a typical tactic of the endgame, right? So here white played b5, but black didn't play correctly. Once more, it's Morphy that points out at the right move. Black should have played g4 check, and you cannot take in g4. Why? Because knight e3, forking the king and the bishop, okay? So this is Morphy that sees these things immediately. But what did black play? He played knight takes c3. That is not so good. Why? Because after b6, again, at this point, white just want to exchange all the pawns, and once you find yourself with no pawns, how do you win the game? So a b, king g4. Oh, sorry, not after a b, there is knight b5. Sorry, my fault. And this is a mistake too. He should have done this move, knight d5. Because once more, if he plays bishop e4, there is g4. Instead, he played this move that is not good because now white can finally go on that square. That was the problem, right? Knight d6 is trying to get that. Bishop d3. Knight e4. So guys, remember this is an endgame. It's very, very dangerous. You go to take here, he plays f3. You take, he plays g2, and he's gonna promote. So you must check all these little moves, okay? Knight e4, bishop e2, king d4, bishop f3, king e5, bishop e2, king f6, bishop f3, and now another mistake with this knight f2. And it seems McDonnell with this move has thrown away the win. Why? Because there is king h5, g4, bishop takes b7, and if you take there, you have lost the endgame, because black will be able to defend that. And going to the famous opposition. So after bishop b7, king e7, bishop c8, king d6, bishop takes g4, king c6, and here it was agreed the draw. So we see once more that the endgame technique is as important as the opening, because as you can see, if also you are having a good opening, or at least you come out winning from the opening and the middle game because you are a better player, then if you are not able to win the resulting endgame, how do you do? Okay, so this is the book I want to show you, and of course I love these old books that have a lot of history and a lot of historical games. I hope you enjoyed it too. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.